Welcome to Tech Leader 360.
We were able to convince Bill Gates.
Effective leaders understand the weight of what their leadership is, but they don't recognize it in themselves.
In my experience, stories change culture.
If you are a software engineer or a data scientist or a solution architect or any IT professional, this is for you. First of all, thank you, John, for joining this podcast. It is an honor for us to invite you here. And especially I've seen your experience. You have almost like served 40 years as a leadership experience.
Yeah, more than that.
Can you give us a little bit about your background, childhood background?
Yeah, of course. And I'll probably put in context that I never had leadership as a goal. Mm-hmm. I think I found myself in leadership positions, but I never had a goal that said, this is what I want to be. Mm-hmm. So for those who are goal-oriented, I sort of happened into things. My life is a life of stumbling into things.
Magically it happened to you.
I don't know, just, providence, whatever. So I grew up in Massachusetts. I grew up in the Boston area. So I grew up there, one of four kids, immigrant parents, Greek and Swedish. But I grew up American. Mm-hmm. I was the third of four kids, and nobody paid much attention to me, and so I didn't really do very well in school. And I wondered, how am I going to make a living? How am I going to thrive if I don't get into college, if I don't get a career? And it turns out that in Massachusetts back then and still now, you can go to a high school trade school. And that's what I did. So I went to a vocational high school and learned to be an electrician, and then I graduated, and at 19 I was able to get my license as an electrician.
Oh, you started as an electrician.
As an electrician, right, as a construction electrician, and worked in the field. And so in many ways, I sort of leapfrogged many of my friends who went to college, because while they were going to college, I was making like adult wages in a profession. And I did that for a few years, and I found myself in California, and someone saw me and said, would you like to start a business? This is where I didn't plan it. Would you like to start a business? And I said, sure. I had no idea what I was doing.
No idea about the business.
Absolutely no idea what I was doing. And I think that I can't even tell you why. It just did. So I started a company, and I had about 25, 30 people working for me. I was a whole 21 years old. I was so out of my depth. I had no idea what I was doing. But we made a lot of money. We had good revenue. We made a lot of money. And when it finally grew, it outgrew my ability to just brute force manage.
Wow.
But the bottom line was good, and the guy who owned the business gave me a big bonus, and then he hired someone who actually knew how to manage a business. And I realized that I really enjoyed the challenge of doing things through others as opposed to my own hands. And I found myself in Seattle, where we are now, and I got a job as an estimator. And the first job they put me on was a 25 megawatt substation in Prudhoe Bay, Alaska. Here, go estimate this. And once again, it was trust. Somehow they trusted me, and I had no idea what I was doing. But I had some pipe-smoking, gray-haired guys who mentored me and showed me the ropes. And it turns out that it wasn't all that difficult. I could learn that. And then I started estimating, and basically estimating is building large multi-million-dollar large projects for Boeing and high-rises and hospitals. You're actually building the projects on paper. And one of the engineers saw me and said, would you help me design something? And I said, sure. And because I understood the field, how things work in the field, I understood the economics of it, then I understood the design. They said, do you own a suit? And I said, no. So I bought a suit, and they brought me to a sales presentation, and I presented the project. And
I see.
And then all of a sudden, I found myself being in a business leadership role. Now I was selling projects, designing projects, managing projects. And I had, all the way along, there were people in business who would see me and say, would you like to do this? Would you like to do that? And I would just go, Sure.
So I want to ask you one thing because
Yeah.
you jumped into real estate business. You
Yeah.
started as
Construction.
construction in
Yeah.
business, and you have seen the opportunities and you started executing those opportunities,
Right.
and eventually you have become a leader in the real estate sector.
Well, in the leadership in the real estate sector, but in the technical facility sector.
Mhm.
So everything that has to do with smart buildings, smart cities, smart facilities.
I see.
So it's all around technology integration.
Yeah. So my question was like, was there a leader in you already, or were you kind of learned it over the period of the time?
That's a really good question. And it's something I've thought about as I've studied leadership theory, leadership concepts. I think that I didn't think of leadership as a thing. I just saw opportunities and needs and said, oh, that needs to get done. Who do I need to help me do that?
Okay.
It was more like need-driven, opportunity-driven, but I never thought about, oh, how do I become a better leader? It was more like, how do I get this thing done? That
I see.
seems...
So you have become a leader not by books but by instincts.
Yeah, I think so.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Awesome. What were the biggest challenges that you have gone through it?
Well, once I mastered that sort of how to sell complex projects, I was invited by clients to help them solve their problems. So a big project, big client was Microsoft, a big client was Toyota. I had to learn the Toyota method, and I would work with teams within Toyota, and they didn't know about my background. They just invited me because I helped them solve problems. I asked questions, and I was able to lead teams of people sort of out of my own depth, honestly.
So it's
Yeah.
basically...
And at one point I decided people want to hire me for how I can help them. Maybe I'll start a consulting business. So I walked away from the construction industry and started a consulting business. But I realized I really didn't have the tools. So I took a program at Caltech on technology management.
Fantastic.
And I just got some tools.
Good. So can you also talk about, right after this construction experience, you have joined Microsoft
Right.
in a leadership role, and
Yeah.
also CenturyLink, and built world-class enterprise scale data centers.
Yeah.
So can you please talk about a little bit on the your experience building these kind of a very large enterprise scale data centers?
Yeah. Once again, it was a complete. It was like I just look at it, it's just almost hilarious how it happened. So I was hired. Microsoft at the time was growing globally.
When was this actually?
97. And they had like $5 billion back in those dollars. I mean, that's big money no matter what it is. $5 billion capital plan to expand throughout the world. And they needed someone to hire to lead engineering for all of their facilities. And so I left my consulting business, sold it, went to work for Microsoft as an employee with great profit, great shares and everything. But I don't know, within a month I thought this is the biggest mistake I've ever made.
Oh, I see.
Because I liked being out with my customers, solving their problems, and now I was stuck inside solving one problem. It was one problem globally, but it was still one problem. And I thought, this is the biggest mistake I ever made. But I hung in there. Now, to go back in 1988, 10 years earlier, I had designed and built Microsoft's very first data center, Building 11.
Wow.
And at the time, it was just a big computer room, but it was their data center. So, and I did all that and left it. So 10 years later, I'm working for them, and the data center had a massive catastrophic failure.
Wow.
It went dead. Microsoft.com, 404, MSNBC, dead. It was the world. Globally, Microsoft was down. It was on its knees. I got a call late at night and said, hey, Building 11's down. I went, so? And they said, well, you need to come in. So I came in, and it was dark. So funny, I'd remembered the design, and I called the people I needed to call. We got it back up again. And the next day I was in Building 8, which at the time was the executive suite, and everybody was there but Gates. And they all wanted to know what happened. I said, oh, well, it failed. And they said, well, why did it fail? And I said, well, it was never designed not to fail. It was designed to be a computer room, but not a data center. And they said, everything we have, that's the brain stem of our business. That can never happen again.
Yeah.
Ever. I said, well, you're asking a single engine plane to fly across the ocean. It wasn't designed for that. They said, your job, they didn't ask me. They just said, your job is to make sure that never happens again, and you have whatever resources you need, whatever headcount, whatever dollars. I mean, and it was like, oh, okay. So it was one of those things where wrong opportunity, but the right time. And they basically gave me carte blanche to do whatever I wanted to do. So I hired a bunch of people, and I traveled around the world, and I met other data center owners, and we built best practices.
It reminds me one more thing about your construction work, because when I was talking to you in the coffee shop last time, you also said that you have built airports, right?
Yeah.
Can you talk about the airports? Because we never met people who have built airports.
Oh, yeah.
Very rare to see. So can you talk about that experience of how did you build the airports? What can if you are okay to talk about those?
Sure. Yeah. No, airports are fantastic. Airports are quite an ecosystem. And I think one of the things to remember when you're building an airport is you've got and I think actually I've come to believe this is true about every technology and every undertaking. We live in capital marketplace. People spend money, investors spend money, businesses spend money, and you have to understand the economics of it in order to know how to build the right thing.
Correct.
So I'll give you an example. A large international airport is generally owned by a port authority. It's not owned by individuals. It's owned by the port. Now, here's what's interesting. The port may own the airport, but it's actually managed by an operating group. So you have the terminals with the restaurants and all this stuff, and they're all paying rent. Okay? And then the person that manages the airport and funds it also gets, besides the rent from the restaurants and the bookstores and all the kiosks and all that sort of thing, they also get rent from the airlines. And those airlines have to have agreements in place. And, oh, by the way, you fuel the airplanes too. So there's this whole ecosystem of leases and rents and whatnot. At the end of the day, you've got to do a financial pro forma that says, here's how we design and build this and operate it so that it becomes financially viable for all the stakeholders. Everyone has to be able to be willing to pay a rent level that satisfies a debt. And so even as the kind of lighting, the kind of energy systems you put in, the kind of controls, the kind of fuel delivery systems, all have to feed into an economic model. And that's important to know. So anyway, yeah, I mean, you have to start with that, and then you back into the what you build.
Correct. So since you built airports and you built enterprise scale data centers, and so what all these infrastructure are kind of falling under the sustainable infrastructure?
Yeah.
So what did you think through it before or later?
No, you have to think through it before. In fact, there are requirements now. So what's your water utilization? What's your emissions look like? What's the embedded carbon within the materials? One of the projects that I worked on, we have all this biomass waste that comes from airports, all the garbage. Where does it go? Well, it turns out that you could send that, instead of sending it to the landfill, you can send it to a biodigester that generates energy that supports the airport. So now you've got a waste to energy business model that you can build in, and you've got someone who can build that waste process, sell the energy back to the airport at a profit. It handles the waste. So the sustainability now is really built into most large infrastructure projects.
So you have had a great career at Microsoft, and then you moved to CenturyLink.
Right.
And you had a prior experience, almost like a 20 to 25 years of construction experience, especially retail sector, right? Real estate sector. So why did you move to build your own startup right after that?
Well, I didn't. I co-founded a startup.
Oh, you co-founded it.
Yeah. So one of the things when I was at Microsoft, Microsoft when I was there it's kind of an idea incubator. Like we were all encouraged to explore ideas. And they sent me to a sustainability conference in New York that Forbes had put on. And I met these sustainability guys, like executives from large businesses. And I got inspired about that. And one of the sustainability developers was developing a 2,000-acre fully sustainable net zero city. Okay, this is 1999 now. Okay.
Wow.
And so I went down and I visited with them, and it was a big, ambitious venture, and there were like celebrities involved and financiers and this big thing down in California. And I said, man, Microsoft would love to be in this. So I met up with Nathan Myhrvold's group and said, hey, there's this emerging thing. I think this is the right thing. And I had a couple of their thought leaders come to me and say, we would love to be involved in this, but with the now former CEO at the helm, he wasn't very interested in doing anything but selling Windows and Office. And and we said, but no, this is IoT before IoT was a thing. This is smart cities. We can build a large ontological model, and that's what we did. We kind of worked on that. But I couldn't get anybody at Microsoft to be interested in it. It's okay. I couldn't get anybody to champion anything. I had people at Microsoft who were interested, but I couldn't get anybody like of executive level to want to do anything with it. So anyway, I had my plate full at Microsoft with the data center stuff, and then I left and went to CenturyLink because of organizational shifts and opportunities there to do a turnaround, and then the people that I had met as part of that development were able to raise money and develop an ontological engineering company that would do smart cities. So we take 11 elements of a city: waste, water, energy, transportation, food production. There were about 11 categories, and we built an ontology in Extensim.
Wow.
And they said, we got a few $1 million. British Aerospace wants to invest in us and partner with us. Would you join us as a COO? And I was like, are you sure you're talking to the right guy? And they said, yeah. So I joined them, and we did a couple of model projects in Hawaii.
So right after that, you joined T-Mobile?
T-Mobile, yeah.
So can you please talk about the leadership experience, because especially this is where I wanted to talk more on the leadership, your experience on the T-Mobile. Right now, you're handling the team of innovation strategy and planning for advanced technologies.
Right.
So can you please talk about more in details of what exactly you do at T-Mobile and how it is impacting to this the telecom industry?
Yeah. I would say the telecom industry is sort of a juxtaposition of very old telephones. Think old AT&T, Ma Bell, and advancing new technology. All right, with wireless, and it was kind of a personal choice. At certain point in life, you realize how much you want to pour into your job versus how much you want to pour into your family. Would you get a job that you can stay at home? And there was a very good friend of mine who was a research scientist at T-Mobile, and he said to me, "You need to come over." So I applied for a role, and to my surprise, they said, "Come on over." And so what they really wanted me to do was lead organizational transformation, because the model that they had used was resident experts, tribal knowledge. It was people that just knew how to do things, and the executive who hired me said, "Your job is to figure out how to transform from a knowledge base or a subject matter base to a data based decision making organization." So there's two big challenges with that. One is where does the knowledge reside, and the second is the culture. How do you change culture? And so those were the two big challenges that I faced.
So were you acting as a change agent within an organization?
Yeah.
So what was your role as a change agent?
Well, I wasn't a consultant that came in and said, here's how you're supposed to do it. I took the reins and I had to run the business. So my first job, what I realized was that T-Mobile was, and still is, although less so now, was a company that was built on acquisitions. So if you look back at the history of it, there were all these small wireless companies that were acquired under the T-Mobile, but they kept operating like independent companies.
Correct.
So they still functionally were that way, and they had just spun up a national engineering and technology organization for strategy, where I got basically individuals from each of the regions, the regional companies, and then they were on my team.
Maybe their revenues are rolling. The revenues may be rolling up.
Oh yeah,
And maybe integration challenges of these M&As.
fast growth, super fast growth, and T-Mobile's position had been a far, fourth place behind the other three, but because of the breakup clause with AT&T, they got this boatload of cash, a bunch of spectrum. They got the new CEO, and they just started growing like crazy with 5G. And there were a lot of dynamics behind that. But my job was to take this strategy and planning side and turn it from spreadsheets and SharePoints and distributed knowledge into a central thing. And I'll tell you, it's one of the hardest things ever, because there's high resistance from people whose identity and sense of value come from their knowledge, as opposed to their ability to seek out problems and solve them in new, different ways. So that was a big challenge.
What are the fundamental challenges that you are facing on a day-to-day basis? Because when leadership are giving you directions to do this X and Y, Z, but at a ground reality, if you're executing those things, there will be a lot of resistance.
Yeah.
So because your ownership is to remove that resistance, and at the same time you have to have a buy-in, everybody to be buying into your thought processes and your planning. So can you tell us about some of the real life examples of how you have taken those problems and solved and showed the results?
Yeah. Well, when you inherit an existing organization, they can make you or break you.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So you have
because cultural changes.
You cannot come in and go, we're going to do everything differently. You've got to honor the knowledge, honor the commitments that have been there, honor the seniority, because you don't know what you don't know.
Correct.
And they do.
Yes.
So you've got to work with them. On the other hand, you've got to help them buy into the notion that we can't keep doing what we've been doing and expect to be able to go for the future. So you got to get that buy-in, and they'll buy in cognitively. Yes, they'll agree with you. So one of the things that I did, very first thing that I did, is I got an all hands and I flew, because I had a distributed team as well. Because remember, they were in the regions, and I flew them all in, and we had team building.
Like a fantastic dinner.
Fantastic dinner. We did games.
Wow.
Team building games. And then we sat down, and I facilitated a meeting where I helped them decide that we needed to change the structure.
Wow.
And you do that through facilitation. You don't do it through top down.
Correct.
You go, what are some of our biggest challenges? And we'd whiteboard those out. And what are some of the biggest obstacles? And we'd whiteboard those things down. And what are some of the biggest things that inhibit us from success? And then we listed out and showed how everything was.
But you did not tell them. You extracted.
No,
you extracted
it was like teaching class. Well,
Wow.
class, what does this look like?
Wow.
And this was not to fake them out. This was to get them to own it.
So that
and what I led them to
that
was
they are acknowledging that the mistakes, the issues.
yeah. And so one of the biggest challenges was that everybody owned all the disciplines within their regions, and there was no sharing of that knowledge. But they were all multidisciplinary engineers. And I said, what would you guys think if instead of you owning Northeast, you owning Southeast, you owning Central, you owning Mid-Atlantic, what would happen if I say you own everything in this discipline instead? So we went from silos into
horizontal.
linear. And what happened was, it wasn't my sites, my thing anymore. It was now my discipline. And they bought into it. And we listed it all out. We broadcasted it to the rest of the organization. These are now your new points of contact. Here's how we're structured. Here's how we're organized. And they had to actually work together now.
Fantastic.
Because now you had, instead of this guy owning everything and he could keep everything alone, Now what happened was they'd have to actually collaborate with the other people.
Wow.
And so it was not easy because they liked holding on to that knowledge.
Shift the gear a little bit
Sure.
to a nonprofit.
Yeah.
So while you're serving in enterprise businesses, and you also worked in nonprofit,
Right.
not just like 1 year, 2 years, you have been there almost like a 30 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
And education, healthcare,
Yep.
so many projects that you have handled, especially in emerging countries.
Yeah.
Can you talk about the leadership experience in nonprofits?
Yeah. It's very different because for-profits, even though I've talked about being thoughtful and humanitarian, is still a very meritocratic business. Those who can do, and those who can't, well, you gotta find the right. Nonprofits oftentimes, there's a lot of volunteers. There's a lot of people who could do better somewhere else financially, and they're there because they believe in the mission. So you have to have a lot more. You have to get a lot more buy-in and ownership of the people who are doing it. And you have to be really, really, really conscious of their personal values when you're interacting with them. You know, frankly, in a business, personal values are great, but we got to make a profit.
At the end of the day, they get a
no
paycheck.
Martian, no mission, right?
Yeah.
None of us get a paycheck if the company doesn't succeed. In nonprofits, it's not about revenue. Donors give money to things they believe in. They get moved by the people who are delivering on those things they believe in. So it's a very different kind of a thing, and so it's a balancing act of donor expectations or grantee expectations, grantor expectations, and the mission that the people are on. Yeah, it's a whole different.
Yeah.
And especially you get a lot of volunteers.
Yes.
And volunteers are totally mission driven.
Mission driven.
Yeah.
So what kind of projects you have handled in nonprofit segment?
Well, working in church, leadership in churches, that's for one thing. I've done that for decades. I've done project level nonprofit work overseas in micro development and healthcare in, like I mentioned earlier, in Africa, building a school in Ghana. It's been a mixed bag, particularly cross-culturally. So one example was, and it's actually a really good principle, I was leading, I was putting a power system in for a school in Ghana. And I had two choices. I could go hire a bunch of heavy equipment. We had about 20 acres, and we had to run 3,000 feet of power lines to buildings that didn't exist.
Correct.
I had one of two choices. Now, this is out in the middle of nowhere. I could have used heavy equipment, or I could have hired local villagers and paid them to do it. And that's just like gold for them because they just don't have a monetized economy. So if you hire them, they need that. They need to have financial resources, and they just don't. So I hired about 25 or 30 of them, and I had them. They were cutting down elephant grass and digging trenches and doing all that work. And I one of them was just really slow and I mean, we weren't beating them, but I was giving them work. But one of them was slowing everybody else down. So I told my supervisor, the guy that I had hired to manage the crew, I said, would you, we're going to let this guy go.
I see.
And he wouldn't fire him.
Wow.
And all the people who were working for me came around me and begged me not to let him go.
Wow, that's very interesting.
And I said, I've got to let him go. So I let him go. And I was there for like 3 months. And after the 3 months, the last payday for everybody, and I was standing around, we were drinking Cokes, and all these guys came up to me and they said, "We're so glad that you sent him away." I said, "Wait a minute. So glad that you sent him away?" He goes, "Oh yeah, he's so lazy and he was disruptive to all of us, and we just really, you needed to get rid of him." I said, "But you all begged me to keep him." He says, "Well, of course, he's our brother. After you leave, we got to live with him." So this idea of loyalty and belonging, and I was just a guy coming in from the outside. And even though we were pouring money into the project and getting it all done, the relationships that they had was stronger than anything I could ever have with them.
Wow.
And so it was really powerful to understand the dynamics of me being the foreigner. And every time I've done work internationally overseas, I always have to remember I'm the foreigner, I'm the outsider, and the relationships that bind in traditional cultures is stronger than anything that I can ever do.
True.
So you have to understand that as you're working in those places to make sure you get the buy-in and the right people, and it can't be top down. It's got to be a very listening kind of leadership.
Right after this, while you were working at profit company, at the same time non-profit company,
Yeah.
what made you to do masters in leadership and the theology?
Yeah.
So can you, because that actually motivated me to have this kind of a conversation in this podcast, and so can you please deep dive into the
Yeah.
leadership and theology and your belief system?
Yeah,
So-
absolutely. So I was working. I had volunteered to do a project because remember, I'm still an electrician. I may be a leader, but I still know how to use the tools. And I was working on a project in Niger, West Africa, in a hospital, and I was working putting in power for the operating room. Think of this as mud brick, tin roof, very, very primitive. And the mortality rate at that hospital is very high because by the time people come in, they're pretty bad. And so there's just high mortality rate. So a lot of people die. And my electrical room was right next to the morgue, which was really where they put the bodies. And so every day I was watching little funerals outside the door as the local villagers, someone would die. And so I was just surrounded by that and all that goes with that. And at the same time, I was reading When Breath Becomes Air by
Yeah.
Paul Kalanithi.
Yeah,
And,
I also read that book actually, in fact.
Yeah. And it was so moving to me because I was early 60s and he was 37, and I thought, he died. What am I to make of the life that I'm doing? Am I really living fully into the life that I'm doing? How do I flourish? How do I cause flourishing? What legacy do I leave, and why do I care? And I really had these sort of metaphysical questions that were really quite. I wasn't happy with my answers.
Wow.
I just wasn't satisfied.
Like a kind of awakening call, something.
Yeah. And I thought I don't even have the vocabulary to describe the struggle that I'm having with 40 years of working in industry, climbing the ladder, taking care of my family, developing, whatever wealth I have. And why do I do? That's the big question, the why.
I see.
Why am I doing this? And what do I do next to make sure that So there was there's a school in Vancouver, British Columbia called Regent College. It's a graduate school of theology, and they had a program called Master of Arts in Leadership, Theology, and Society. And I really liked it because it's like, it's comprehensive, it's historical, it blends faith and purpose and meaning into technique and history, and it just seemed like the right program. So I came back from Africa, and we were right in the middle of the merger with Sprint, and so I just quickly signed up. So now all of a sudden I'm managing like the doubling of my team and a merger and COVID, and I'm taking this 2-year program, and it was some of the hardest things I've ever done.
Because now this is where I wanted to ask you a very interesting question, is that since you have seen the corporate life, you've seen the non-profit
Right.
leadership style, now after 40 years you have opened a new lens of leadership and theology.
Right.
So I want to ask you a question about the leadership. What are the fundamental motives of leaders? And what is your wisdom and your lens that you can be able to add the current leadership experience?
That I instinctually did that were good. There were a lot of things that I did that weren't quite so good. I think that studying the various leadership styles, I was forced to reckon with what I think a good leader is. What is a good leader? And how do I know? So I think for me, what I learned is it came down to two things.
So the intrinsic motivations.
The internal motivation. And as a Christian, my model is Jesus. So Jesus was a servant leader, the ultimate servant leader. In fact, there was almost nothing about him. Every time people started following me, he'd go off somewhere else. It's like, but it was all about servant leadership, and it was all about others flourishing. My ideal leader is an egoless servant, causes other people to flourish.
How do we identify these traits within an organization?
I was thinking about this on the way over here tonight. There's a great book by this guy named John Dixon called Humilitas. Humilitas. Yeah, it makes it fancy because it sounds, Latin. But one of the things that he says is that the sure sign of humility is that the person doesn't know they have it. If you think you're humble, it's a good sign you don't, right? And I actually started thinking about that's almost the way it is with leadership. Effective leaders understand the weight of what their leadership is, but they don't recognize it in themselves because they're so focused on others. And I actually think that's true. Most people I know who I've seen have not caused flourishing of others as they've gone to leadership are self-absorbed. And at the end of the day, they're like every other mortal that has to face their own mortality. And what do they leave behind? What do they leave behind?
Legacy.
What's their legacy, right? And so for me, it's really caused me to think deeply about letting others take credit. I mean, honestly. And you have to have death to ego. But that's not the human condition. We love ourselves up. We call it self-affirmation or whatever, or hyper-individualism. We want this thing. But at the end of the day, as I'm getting older now, and I hope it's a softening, is I get more satisfaction out of other success than accolades for me. Okay. And I think that's the key to actually mastering leadership. I'd like to say I'm there. I'd like to say I'm egoless, but I'm not. I still have that propensity. But as I'm seeing more and more as I mature, it's like, okay, I'm being effective when I see others succeed and I see things blossom without my having to be there. And I think that's, to me now, that's sort of my view of effective leadership.
So if I understand correctly that what I'm understanding is that egoless leader, servant leader, right? So in traditional organizations, we always end up seeing kind of a biased leader or how do I say, there is always a self because of their personal growth. So we do see a lot of leaders where they call it as I leaders. We call it the I leaders.
Right.
So what is a fundamental message that you can give to transform from I to we leaders?
Yeah, I think it's also, if I can say this, it's leadership happens top down, side to side, bottom up. I think sometimes we misunderstand leadership as being someone at the top who has the power to make things happen. I find that I get more done through influencing up and out, oftentimes than I do from top down.
I see.
And so I think we misunderstand the nature of leadership as always having to be hierarchical.
Yeah, let me put it this way.
Yeah.
How much self-awareness will help I leader to become a we leader?
A lot. I think introspection and reflection is important. And that's where, for me, the spiritual disciplines, which promote a sense of my own finitude and my own gratitude. This is one other thing I was going to mention. One of my favorite authors is a guy named Ray Barfield. Ray Barfield he's a pediatric oncologist and a professor of philosophy at Duke Divinity School. So he's got these two sides. And he says that a third of his patients die. So think about this. Children, patients, oncologist. I mean, he is right on the edge of that. And one of the things in one of his books that he wrote to physicians about the philosophy of medicine is the illusion that we have of choices. So we live in a time where we think choices is a right.
Choices is a right.
Right. We all have choices. And I have talked to countless of my peers who think they are self-made people.
Fantastic.
And he says that's a fallacy, that we have very little choice of when we were born, to whom we were born, our physical, our intellectual capabilities, our physical capabilities, and we don't get to choose if our life will end in death. So we're all mortal. But I realize that and one of the things that theological training has given me and perspective is a real profound sense of gratitude that everything I have, the people who believed in me, the people who invited me to the table, my intellectual ability to respond to these things, my personality to sell ideas, these are all gifts.
Fantastic.
I didn't earn these. They're not mine. So what happens is it gives you an open hand of, these aren't mine, I'm stewarding this for other people's benefit. And that's a profound change from the it's mine and I'm going to do with it what I want to get what I need. And that's just it's a different posture.
I see. So, in your opinion, how do you conclude how to become a good leader? What are the qualities of a good leader?
I think fundamentally other focused.
Focused.
Other focused. Yeah.
And enable other people's success.
Yeah. Because they are your legacy when all is said and done.
Fantastic. So, do you have any recommendations on the books that you have written, have studied?
Yeah.
And any books that you want to recommend to our audience?
Yeah. So I think Peter Senge's The Fifth Discipline, just an excellent book. There's a lot of others that are out there. Here's two more that I think are really, really have probably been the two most profound books. One is Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman, and the other one is Black Swan by Nassim Taleb. Those two have really helped shape my thinking about our internal biases and how I view reality, and help me recognize other people's biases, and rather than try and correct them or fight with them, do a little judo where it's like, okay, how can we help them rethink their biases? And so those three books, the learning organization, those have been really profound.
Fantastic. So, having a 40 years of industry experience, both profit and non-profit, and finishing masters in leadership, theology, and now looking at the life in a different spectrum, and whatever the life that you have, remaining life as a bonus and enjoying that as a gift. What a perspective that you have carried, John. So first of all, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you for having me.
For coming to our show and giving your wisdom, knowledge, experience, and your transformative leadership experience. This was a fantastic way to hear from you, John.
Yeah, I'm honored that you're interested. Happy to share.
So once again, thank you very much for joining to our podcast, Tech Leader 360.
Thank you.
Thank you.